We have Jane Goatley here with CKEC, and oh my goodness, the amount of variety that you bring to the table. You're a National Board Certified Teacher, a math consultant at our co-op CKEC, and you did undergrad work in two different languages, math and Spanish, and a master's degree in behavior disorders. So well versed, and then you specialize in co-teaching, especially design instruction and mathematics instruction, and specialize in effective math teaching, which we're all here to hear today, and the partnership between the two partners that you're working with, and the Council of Exceptional Children and the National Council of Teacher of Mathematics, particularly on students with disabilities in mathematics and how to instruct them in their needs. So thank you so much. And you're going to be a doctor soon.
Not well, at some point, hopefully.
You're working on your
Working on
doctorate?
it.
Yes. And that will be in the area of curriculum and instruction and math education. And you're with the University of Louisville studying that right now. So we never stop learning. We never stop pushing ourselves. Always a student, right?
Right.
So we're here. We're happy to have you here to teach us. We're here to learn from you, and thank you for presenting today,
Oh,
Jane.
awesome. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Brandy. I really appreciate, I know this has been a long day of learning in the last session of the day, but hopefully we'll get some good information and just awareness around this position statement and the recommendations that have been released recently from the Council for Exceptional Children, CEC, and then National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, NCTM. Lots of letters, lots of acronyms. But this kind of stemmed from my time at the co-op. I'm in my third year at CKEC, and being having gone through my own personal learning, working with folks on the math ed side of research, and then looking through the lens of the special ed side of research, what has come about was the need for math ed and special ed math to kind of have an aligned position on best practices for teaching mathematics to students with disabilities. So a committee was formed with representatives from both organizations to come together to say, hey, this is where we align and believe our best practices for working with students with disabilities in math. And there's a lot of great math work being done across the state right now with House Bill 162 on the rise. So it's I think it's a good opportunity to kind of see where things are going in mathematics. And I'm really excited about that, and excited about math kind of being on the forefront of people's minds, especially into the spring semester. So I'm breaking all of the rules of like proper presentation etiquette. I'm gonna be giving you all a lot of information today, and then I'm happy to discuss further if you have any questions or want some support moving forward. I can point you to your math consultant in your co-op, and or answer any questions that you might have here. So let's dive in and get going with this. And I have a QR code for you and links for you all to have slide decks. Any of the resources that I'm going to share, they're all for you all, and please distribute to whomever you think might enjoy learning more about this position statement. So this, the position from NCTM and CEC talks about the important role of educators in ensuring that students with disabilities have access to and success with grade level and course level standards. We want these students to receive high quality instruction and are supported by systems that believe in their abilities. So that's kind of the position from CEC and NCTM around supporting students with disabilities. So we're going to go into lots of words here, but I'm going to give you a moment just to read through this and look through some of the big ideas of the beliefs that the two organizations have come together to align upon, and as we dive more into the recommendations. So just read this position statement for a moment. And as you look through this statement, I added emphasis to some of the things that I wanted to highlight for you all. And just thinking that it is a shared responsibility between the mathematics educators, special educators, administrators, related service providers, families, and then other people who are interested to work with students with disabilities and in schools around mathematics, and the importance of collaboration. We need to know, educators need to know when to collaborate. They need to have opportunities and space to collaborate. And we want to do this to make sure we're aligning what mathematics the students learn, how they're learning, and how it's going to be assessed. So we all need to be on the same page when we're thinking about supporting our struggling learners in mathematics. And it is not lost on me that this is a complex task. This is really, really challenging. It takes a lot of creativity. It takes a lot of knowledge in a lot of different areas to make this happen. But the most important part is everyone working together as a cohesive team. So here are some of the recommendations and ideas behind that were released in the article. And again, I'm going to link the full article for you all at the end of the talk. But the first thing we want to think about is that students with disabilities have a right to access and be provided with appropriate supports to be successful with grade and course level content. If anyone's been through any of our specially designed instruction trainings at CEC, we always highlight that portion in IDEAs that says that students with disabilities have a right to not only have access to, but they need to be meeting grade level standards. So everyone has to be on the same page and having high expectations around students' abilities, and we've got to be able to craft a program that allows them to meet those grade level standards. Students with disabilities have a right to high quality instruction. Touched on that a little bit. And students with disabilities have a right to be supported by educators who believe in their abilities. And we know this, but I think sometimes it's good to reflect upon maybe culture and thinking about students in your buildings and thinking about what are the attitudes around the abilities of the students. Do we have belief in our students that they can learn? And sometimes it's our job as administrators and working with leadership to kind of encourage teachers who are frustrated or maybe have lost a little bit of hope that all students can learn. And we just need to be creative and thoughtful and collaborative in how we're going to support students to meet our high expectations and to support their learning at a very high level. At the district level and school level, the recommendations for leadership were ensuring the delivery of ongoing professional learning on evidence-based math practices and including practical hands-on experiences. So gen ed teachers and special ed teachers need ongoing professional learning on math-specific content. Okay, they need to be working together. We need to be working collaboratively to think about what is our content knowledge, what is our pedagogical knowledge around professional learning and ideas in mathematics, and do we have a great grasp on these evidence-based math practices? So it might be a great idea to just take some inventory, do some reflection. What is the content knowledge of my staff around evidence-based math practices? Is this an area that we feel great in? Is this an area of growth? Do we need some more professional learning around that? But CEC and NCTM recognize that this is an important feature of a successful program is continued ongoing professional learning. They said they want to build supports for regular collaboration, a designated and dedicated time between gen ed and special ed teachers, regardless of service delivery models. If you have students that are receiving their services in mathematics solely in a resource room, it still needs to space still needs to be created for the gen ed and special ed teachers to collaborate and work together and make sure they're aligned on content, on standards, on evidence-based practices. So they have ongoing support. So regularly built-in time for gen ed teachers and special ed teachers to collaborate. And this happens more easily when co-teaching systems are put into place. But regardless of service delivery model for that student or students, there needs to be dedicated time, which is challenging. That is not lost on me. But just to kind of put on your radar, if that's not happening in your school or in district, that's something to think about. Like, how are we building that in for our teachers? And school and district leadership needs to ensure funding and resources for high quality instructional materials, including assistive technology. So another space where you might say, hey, what instructional materials do we have? Do we need to purchase more manipulatives? Do we need some AT devices for students to have full access? How are things going with our calculators? Do teachers and students have sufficient training on how to use some of these AT devices in mathematics? So just some things to think about at the school and district level, that these were recommendations that the committee from NCTM and CEC suggested for district personnel. I'm also going to go through some of the recommendations for gen ed and special ed teachers, so you all can be aware of that and take this back to your schools and your districts. So here are the teacher recommendations. Incorporate a UDL framework in unit and lesson planning. I'm going to talk about that more in depth in a moment. We're going to use appropriate and accurate representations. We're going to talk about CSA a lot: concrete, semi-concrete, abstract, and the importance of teaching those three forms of representation simultaneously. Plan proactively using a preventative model for instruction. Really important. I'll go into more details. Position with students with disabilities as valuable owners and owners of and contributors to the mathematics being learned. Everyone's part of a community there. Provide paired time for students to share and rehearse their thinking and ideas in multimodal ways before moving to whole group discussion. Provide a variety of interactive learning experiences. Use flexible grouping structures to cultivate a community of learning, and build meaningful connections between concepts and procedures. So I'm not going to have time to go into all of these into detail, but I'm going to highlight some of the ones that I think are kind of priorities for me and priorities that I think for you all to take back to your schools. So first things first, and I've already touched on this a little bit, we need to position students with disabilities as valuable owners of and contributors to the mathematics being learned. Okay. The mindset has to be that our students who are struggling, the students with disabilities, they are owners and contributors to the mathematics being learned. It's how we're going to build in opportunities and craft those creative programs within a UDL framework that is going to allow them to participate fully in our mathematics classes. So that's just one of those things. I think it's good just to kind of be aware of mindsets in your buildings. Do we believe these students can learn? And do we need to have any conversations or programming around that? The next thing I want to talk about is incorporating a UDL framework, Universal Design for Learning, into our unit and lesson planning. A lot of some of the resources I'm going to be sharing today come from Rachel Lambert's book that is hot off the press. It came out in the spring about rethinking disability in mathematics. And I'm going to share some more information on that. But she talks a lot about incorporating UDL into unit and lesson planning. And I like this quote. She says, "I see UDL as a way to move, a way to notice what is not working for our students, what barriers there might be, and then we need to creatively open up our classrooms so that more students can be successful." So it's kind of working with teachers to have the mindset of like, I need to consider all of my students and how I'm going to open up this math classroom for everyone to have access. And that is not easy. That is a really, like the word complex that I talked about earlier is coming to mind. That requires a high level of cognition and creativity and planning and collaboration to kind of make this happen. And I have pictures of a potato peeler here. And this was an example of like, the goal is to peel a potato, but the person who created the OXO, the potato peeler on the right, was being mindful to think, because his wife was had some arthritis pain, and the traditional potato peeler, vegetable peeler wasn't working. So he designed this new one that was easier to grip, so his wife could peel potatoes. And this is just kind of a visual representation that we might use to think about, like when we're teaching our students with disabilities, like what modifications might we have to make to support our students to the learning goal in math class. And it may look different for lots of students. So we need to be creative and think about what is it going to take for all of the students to meet our goals here. In the book, she talks a lot about teachers need to be considering learner variability. We want to think about developing expert learners in math class, and we need to leverage the interconnected networks of the brain. Okay, so thinking about that UDL framework, we have to take inventory of our students, what's going on with the content, how are we going to develop these students as expert learners, and leverage everyone's unique abilities to reach our goals here. So she talks about, traditionally, we think math class is too narrow. So what can we do about, how do we open it up and then provide strategic support? Okay. And I'm going to give you some resources around tasks that are going to be supportive within that. But just as leadership considers what's happening in your math classrooms right now, is the focus too narrow? Do we see spaces where we can open it up and then provide that strategic support along the way, where we're affording access to all students so they can meet those standards, where when it's too narrow, it can be really limiting. So I think just, again, a good thing to think about as you all go back to your schools and your districts, are conversations around these things happening so we can support all students and their unique needs. Everyone doing okay? Thumbs up. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Rosa. I'm not going to go into details of all of this, but this will be in the slides. But these are just good questions that Dr. Rachel Lambert has done a lot of research around and is kind of promoting. And as we think about, are we raising strategic sense makers? Are we supporting our students in making, as they kind of construct their own math identities? Are we thinking about engagement, representation, strategic action? And what are we as teachers doing to support this inclusive environment in math class? So you all can have this later, but there's just a lot of things to consider. And it all starts a lot. And I think about my students when I was in the classroom. Do they feel safe enough to take mathematical risk? What's that culture? Do our teachers have rapport with students enough so they feel safe? Is the math content meaningful to them? A lot of the things that I train on is like utility. Like, do my students know how this math is going to support them in their lives? And I talk a lot with teachers about this. Like, we need to make connections to the utility of the mathematics consistently and constantly. And if we're not doing that, it's time to start building that in. And is our mathematics equitable? Are we giving our students equitable feedback as we support them to their goals? The next recommendation I want to talk about is concrete, semi-concrete, abstract representations. This is, I say, a kind of a hill I'm dying on in my training, in my work. This is one of the best approaches to support. I mean, all students need experience with this, but especially students who are struggling, using the concrete, semi-concrete, abstract approach. I do get to do a lot of classroom observations, and sometimes what I see is I go into a lot of classrooms and I see thousands of dollars worth of manipulatives sitting in totes on walls. And so my charge during this season is to dust off the manipulatives and support our teachers in getting those back out and utilizing those tools and getting them in students' hands. My dear friend Cricket McClure, who is the math consultant at OVEC, has a great slide and talks a lot about like students need to hold the math, excuse me, the math in their hands before they can hold it in their heads. So there are a lot of challenges with kind of getting the manipulatives out, but I really think it's super important for our students to get their hands on these concrete manipulatives. So so take some inventory when you go back to your schools and see our teachers utilizing this concrete, semi-concrete, abstract approach with students. And again, we have the concrete as our three-dimensional materials. Those are our physical manipulatives. Semi-concrete is 2D, the visual representations, and then the abstract are the math symbols that students are using. And what's really important is that teachers need to be utilizing these all at the same time. We need to be making connections to all three representations while during a lesson for students. We don't need to teach them in isolation. So really is some professional learning might be necessary to support teachers to think about, if we're seeing these things, concrete, semi-concrete, abstract, are we making the connections? So we're here in the sweet spot where they're all being taught at the same time. I'm going to post a link. I have an online module where I talk a lot about concrete, semi-concrete, abstract approach with elementary for elementary teachers. I'm working on middle and high school, not finished yet, but I will share that link with you all if anyone's interested at the end of this session. So please feel free to share with anybody that might be interested. One thing that is super important and that we're going to get to in the next recommendation is plan proactively using a prevention model for instruction. I got to go to a regional NCTM conference with Dr. Karen Karp and Dr. Barbara Daughtry last spring, and they talked a lot about how we need to shift our support for working with students who are struggling from an intervention model to a prevention model, and how we really need to be front loading our students who are struggling so they can have skills, underpinning skills, vocabulary before they see the content in class. And this is going to position them as kind of having a leg up on the students that are seeing the content for the first time. But she talked about, this would be very challenging, but something that I'm talking with districts a lot about is like, how can we front load these ideas, the grade level ideas, a week or two? She said 2 weeks. I think that's kind of tricky, but as much as we can, how can we front load our students so they are exposed to the underpinning targets and prerequisite skills that they're going to need for the grade level content? And if you hear nothing else from me, this might just be something to be aware of, take back. There's some interesting research coming out around this prevention model, and Dr. Karen Karp was brought it to my attention, and it makes a lot of sense. And I've kind of been working through some districts who are coaching around this, and it's been really fruitful. So just wanted to put this on your all's radar as well. And the last one I'm going to talk about today is providing a variety of interactive learning experiences for our students. We need to make sure that we're not just providing one pathway for students to engage with the mathematics. We need to, like I said, like Dr. Lambert said in her UDL framework, that we want to open it up. And we want to give students a variety of interactive learning experiences, the routines, the approaches that we're bringing forth in our math classes. We want to provide our students with a lot of hands-on, practical, applicable experiences. So here are just some books that could be really, and technology initiatives, things like that. And I'm going to link this in the chat, and I have links in the notes feature, or in the notes on the slide deck, that you all can utilize with these. But just thinking, this WODB is which one doesn't belong. It's a routine that is really kind of low floor, high ceiling. It helps to kind of get students engaged in the math content. I've really enjoyed Dr. Marion Small's work. This Good Questions book changed the way that I taught when I was in the classroom, and a lot of low floor, high ceiling tasks, application tasks, really creative ways to get all students engaged. This is a Dr. Karen Karp and other and friends, classroom ready rich math tasks. There are books for all grade levels that are really engaging, fun tasks for students. I'm Building Thinking in Classrooms is a really cool way. It's a great book and a great way to get students involved. Rachel Lambert's book, which I'm going to highlight in just a second, the teacher she discusses in that book is working off of the Building Thinking Classrooms model. So just wanted to put that out there. Same but different. This is what the popcorn is. It's a routine where you ask students kind of what's the same, what's different for our students. Around this topic, here's some books that I'm reading and have read that I think are really, really great. This book, The Rethinking Disabilities in Mathematics, is very hot and buzzing right now. And Dr. Lambert goes into thinking about UDL math, talks a lot about IEP goals, which is fascinating, and something that I'm working through a lot right now is how can we improve our math IEP goals to be supportive and not as limiting. That is also discussed in this Humanizing Disability in Mathematics Education book. This is excellent. It caught me in all my feels. At one point, I had shed some tears because we reflect on our experiences with students, and sometimes feel like for me, there were lots of times where it talked about like where sometimes students with disabilities get advocated for properly, and then sometimes maybe where there were some shortcomings. And it was a really, really insightful book that has changed me for good. So really powerful book here. And then strengths-based teaching and learning in mathematics. So Beth McCord-Kobet and Karen Karp talk about switching the mindset from a deficit mindset to a strengths-based mindset when we're teaching mathematics. So again, another book that was been really powerful for me and has been helpful as I've been working with teachers in my current role. So I wanted to put these books on your radar just in case you are up for some really great reading. And one thing this is rounding the corner for home here, but thinking about administrative action steps for general ed and special ed teachers, do my teachers have a firm grasp on the Kentucky academic standards? How is our content knowledge? Is this an area of growth? Within that, we want to think about the math teaching practices. Do my teachers have facility knowing and implementing and facilitating these effective math teaching practices that are evidence-based math practices? And then are my students having opportunities to engage with the standards for mathematical practice? All of these things need to be considered in our culture of learning in mathematics, and all of that is centered around a really strong task. So I wanted to kind of highlight that for you all. And then if you're not familiar with the Math Pact, all of what I've discussed today can kind of be enveloped in the idea of the Math Pact, which is a whole school mathematics agreement, and where everyone in a math building kind of agrees that these are going to be our approaches and stances and the way we're going to support our students, all students within mathematics, and we're going to have horizontal and vertical alignment. And this is going to support all students, but especially our students with disabilities. There's a chapter on vocabulary, which we know is having consistent vocabulary is really important for students with disabilities. And everyone being aligned on the same page. A lot of this, I get to go, like I said, into a lot of schools. And when I talk about the importance of horizontal and vertical alignment, it is usually illuminated where there are different approaches to vocabulary, strategies, and different even vocabulary words that we're using, which is going to be confusing for all kids, but especially students who are struggling. We need to be aligned and consistent with that. There are a lot of, even like getting aligned with a real world application problem approach, so word problems. Does our school have a consistent approach for that, which is going to be really important for all learners, but especially our students who are struggling, and approaches with strategies and things like that. There's a lot there, but I just wanted to put that on your radar. There is an elementary, middle, and high school book for the Math Pact. So I've talked a lot, and this is maybe not what I would prefer to do with a online training, but I wanted to get this information in your all's hands and build in some time for you to ask questions. Here is a QR code for my slide deck. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and put some links in the chat box for you all. And I would be happy and would love to have answer any questions, or if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share. And as we kind of round out the day, just kind of think about, how is math going in my school and my district, and what are some things that were eliminated today that you might want to reflect upon, take back with you, some questions you may want to ask, and think about what are your steps moving forward. So happy to answer any questions. I'll be on here. I have some time, but I really appreciate you all being with me this afternoon.
Any questions? You can put them in the chat or just unmute. Thank you, Jane.
You're so welcome.
Great information. Lots of great resources.
I am putting in the chat box the online module for the concrete, semi-concrete abstract training that I have done. So feel free to take that back to your folks. And then I have the position statement, the full PDF that I'm gonna leave for you all. And the link for the slide deck. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you all ever have any questions or anything that I can help with, or if you want to check in with your local cooperative math consultant. They are all fantastic, and I love them a lot, and we are good buddies. So if you need some help getting pointed in their direction, I would be happy to support, create that connection and support you moving forward. So thank you all so much.